There's one really cool little feature that Gert's put in, which is the key position feature. So parameter 16 is reserved for this key position controller, which is I'm finding it to be really useful, especially mapping the key number to program change, for example. So I've been using it to change the patch in things like MainStage and some of my audio unit instruments. So I can send out, I can hit a key here, and key 1 will send out program change 1 for me, and it will, or key 2 will send out program change 2, and I can switch between songs in Apple's MainStage really, really nicely using this. So I'll just show you how to do that really quickly. So we say, so basically, yeah, parameter 16 is reserved for this special kind of function. So I'm just going to say MIDI rig 3 recorder, and then, oh no, not recorder, sorry. So what we need to do is connect basically the pressure output from the scaler to parameter 16 to get this to work. So I'm going to say MIDI rig 3 scaler, pressure output to MIDI rig 3 MIDI converter parameter 16 connect. Hit enter, check that says OK down there, and it does. Okay, so now let's put a tick in the box where parameter 16, this new one I've connected up, where parameter 16 meets the modulation wheel, CC1. Okay, so that's all hooked up now. So now, if I go back to the MIDI monitor, can you see that? Yeah, so what I'm doing here is I've got output 44 selected on key group 1, and I hit key 1, as quick as possible, from Eigenharp 3. Okay, so I hit key 1, and you can see here that this highlighted, let me zoom in on that, this highlighted line in the MIDI monitor. Can you make that full screen? Cool. So it says from Eigenharp 3, our new MIDI output, it says control 1, I think that's channel 1, and then this next one means CC1, so the modulation wheel, and it's sent out value of 1. So now if I hit key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I hit key 5 on the Eigenharp, on key group 1, you can see now this new highlighted line, it says channel 1, CC1, and a value of 5. So we can send out quite specific values. And now if I go back to the window, the matrix window, and just as another quick example, I scroll down to the bottom, you can see, as well as the 127 CC values, you've got these kind of special ones at the bottom, like polyphonic aftertouch, channel aftertouch, pitch wheel, program change. So this program change one's cool. So if I just scroll along where parameter 16 meets the program change, I'll put a tick in that box there. And now I can go back to my MIDI monitor, zoom in. Okay, so I can hit key 1. I don't know why it's sending out so much. Okay, I hit key 1, and now this highlighted line here, you can see it says program channel 1 and number 1. So this is really, really, there's lots of uses for that, and people will find, I'm sure. Okay, so that's basically all of the MIDI converter stuff. Have I got any more time?
Not huge amount, like 3 minutes.
Okay, so this is really, really ultra quick then. Okay, so I'm just to do MIDI clock, because that's the last thing that the other MIDI rigs in the setup have. So really quickly, I just say MIDI clock create, and then I can say MIDI rig 3 hey. So I've created a MIDI clock agent, basically. MIDI rig 3 hey, it add to add it to the rig. And then I say, so I connect the kind of the main metronome of the Eigen-D to this new MIDI clock agent. So what it does, it converts like our internal metronome signals into MIDI clocks. So metronome to MIDI rig 3 MIDI clock connect. Metronome to MIDI rig 3 MIDI clock connect. Hit enter, check it says OK, and then I say MIDI rig 3 MIDI clock to MIDI rig 3 MIDI output. And then you remember last time I connected the MIDI converter to the MIDI output using 1, so this one I'm going to connect using 2. So MIDI rig 3 MIDI clock to MIDI rig 3 MIDI output using 2 connect. And then I hit enter again. check it says okay, and it does. So now if so I've started the metronome on my Eigenharp. If I go and check MIDI monitor now, you can see that I've got all this crazy. Well, it's coming out of all the 3 MIDI outputs at the moment. So I've got MIDI out Eigenharps 1, 2, and 3, but they're all sending clocks. That means our new one, MIDI output 3, is also sending the clock out. So that's kind of cool. And then that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Cool.
Cool.
Are there other parameters for MIDI converter, i.e. in the wiki?
Other parameters?
Yeah.
What sort of parameters?
I don't know, that was Mike.
Well, there's a lot of things that the MIDI converter can do, and they're all controllable by bel canto now, which is great. I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but when you put basically, I was saying like let's put a tick in the box. That was the basic thing to do. But you know, if I hit strip 1, then you've got all this kind of stuff here. So we've got the scale factor. So I mean, I'm not very good at explaining this, but that's how. So if I put a scale factor of 0.4 or 0.3 instead of 1, that means that when I move move my hand along strip controller 1, even when it gets to full, it's only going to be at 30% of the CC value when it's sent out. So it's not going to get to the full 127. It's only going to get to 0.3. If I click on it again and put it negative, so I could put it in -1. Now it's in reverse. I'm pretty sure they probably already
He was
know
wondering
this, yeah.
about the overall list of converter functions.
Overall list of converter functions. Well, there is a wiki page for it. Should we point them to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know if let me just find it. It's a wiki. I mean that is the basic. Unless I'm mistaken, I think the basic inputs on the MIDI converter are the notes. So that's like a pressure and a frequency input from the scaler, and then plus you've got these 16 parameter inputs, which you can connect basically any kind of Eigen-D signal to the parameters. If you go to eigenharp.com/wiki, there is at the top of I went to the Eigen-D reference, and then at the top, Gert's written the routing matrix, which is quite an in-depth explanation of the matrix. And at the bottom, so there's loads of stuff you can do. Like for example, now we can use 14-bit CC values instead of 7-bit, which is cool as well. You can set the upper and lower bands, but also down the bottom, if you want to control any of this on a talker, there's the bel canto to like create connections and edit all the settings of the connections. So there's loads you can do now with the MIDI compared to what we could do before, basically. So it's really exciting, and I think pretty much it's all on Gert's wiki page. Yeah.
Cool. So we just come on to any other questions and.
There is.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Unfortunately, the answer is we can't do it. But
yeah.
We had a question sent in from Mike, and is there a way to have an instrument output directly? So I think what that's meaning is there a way to have kind of different audio outputs for different instruments? At the moment, although only for the moment, but at the moment, unfortunately, we can only have a stereo output. So we've only got sort of output 1 and 2 from the system. I haven't, but it would be great if we could have more outputs, hopefully soon. There is. I haven't really played with it much, but there is an audio unit Apple make called AU Net Send and AU Net Receive. I haven't really experimented with it, so I wouldn't like to say whether it works or not. But in theory, I suppose you could send, as your kind of inline effects audio unit, you could possibly use one of these AU Net Send plugins, and then somewhere else, like in your DAW, you can in the plugin chain, you could have the AU Net Receive plugin, and in theory, that should send audio between the two. But I've never really played with it.
Cool. So, yeah, just if there's any more questions, give it a minute or so.
Yeah.
for the time delay to come through.
I'm sure I should read actually.
Noisy bugger. Is there a way with key mapper maybe to silence playing key? Silence a playing key?
To silence a playing key, so no, I think you would need to have, if you wanted to have a kind of set of keys that don't make any sound but send out, like for example program change messages, and you wanted to have a set of keys that play, I think you're probably going to need to build 2 MIDI converters and 2 MIDI outputs. One. Okay, so if I, for example, if I didn't want to send out the notes from this MIDI converter that I've just built, and I just wanted to send out the key information, what I'd need to say would I'd need to say MIDI rig 3 MIDI converter, and then so that's the MIDI converter, and then I'll just say pressure input unconnect. Hit enter, so that says OK. So I've unconnected the pressure and the signal, and then I also need to say MIDI rig 3 MIDI converter frequency input unconnect. MIDI rig 3 MIDI converter frequency input unconnect. Hit enter again. Okay, so now I've connected the pressure, unconnected the pressure and the frequency input. So they're the bits that get converted into MIDI notes. And now if I open MIDI monitor again, I've still got the clock running, so I turn off that. But I choose that's MIDI converter free, so I choose key group output 44. And now you can see I'm playing notes and nothing's coming up in the MIDI monitor. But now if I go to the MIDI converter and connect again parameter 16 to like the modulation wheel, for example, and then I go back to MIDI monitor, and then now I'm sending out, basically I'm sending out the control changes, the different key numbers, but I'm not sending out MIDI notes. So yeah, I don't think, there's not a way to, I think what must have been meant was, is there a way to kind of mute a few notes that you use for sending out, for example, modulation messages, and then have the rest as playing keys? But I think what we've got to do, and what I've done with this setup I'm using with main stage at the moment, is I have a separate key group like this one where it's not sending out notes and it's just sending out program change messages, and I've got another key group that's doing all the playing. So that's how I think you do that.
Cool. Okay, so if there's any more questions, put them in now. What are we doing next week? We were going to do that thing, weren't we?
Yeah, so I was going to look at
that thing.
MIDI. We had some questions about MIDI inputs, which I thought we could cover in a seminar. So it's about like how to get MIDI CC messages and MIDI notes into Eigenharp rather than out. So for controlling various things inside Eigenharp. Specifically, I was asked how to connect external MIDI controllers to parameters in an audio unit inside Eigenharp. So that'd be quite an interesting one to do. So I'll do that. The other question was how to get MIDI notes to inline effects audio units. So like to be able to somehow control inline effects or send MIDI note information from external sources to inline effects audio units. So it's this kind of thing. So basically be looking at MIDI inputs rather than MIDI outputs.
Cool. Good.
Cool.
Okay, so I think that's it. Next week, I think we'll either it might be Thursday, but it might be Wednesday that we do next week. Not 100% sure yet. Just got to finalise some diary arrangements. But yeah, we'll obviously let you know as per usual. So I hope you all have a good weekend, and
yes.
And we'll see you at some point next week.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye.